probably worthwhile now just to have a quick Q&A discussion. So look, a lot of the content that was provided may address questions that you had. You may recall that there was a section in the questionnaire that asked for any hot topics or questions that you have. But we just want to open it up now to see if there's anyone that wants to ask specific questions. And probably the easiest way to do this is just switch your mic on and go for it. Nothing yet. One of the questions that was asked, and Helen, you're probably best to place this, is once a determination has been made and there's interests that apply, who looks after that? You know, who takes carriage of management and making sure that native title is maintained and you know, procedures and requirements are followed?
So once the determination occurs, as part of the determination, a corporation will also be registered with OREC, which is the Office of the Registrar of Aboriginal Corporations or Indigenous Corporations. And it's just like a corporation similar to ASIC, but has different rules under the Corporations Act for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders. And it's basically your point of contact. So for any Future Act related activities or for any sort of planning engagement, your contact would be the prescribed body corporate. And there is also registers through the Native Title Tribunal. Then you've also got the OREC website where you can actually search for the group to see if there is a PBC registered, and or contacting your land council as well. So your land council is always a good first point of contact because they assist the groups to achieve native title determinations. So they will be able to point you in the right direction and give you the contact details for the prescribed body corporate as well. And they also generally, most land councils also, there's some funding available for PBCs as well through the land council to empower the PBC to then engage and build their capacity around responding to and participating in engagement with different stakeholders. And the PBC will also have a list of claimants or native title holders they then become, to then be able to contact and make sure that when you're engaging with the community and how you decide to engage or how the group decides to engage, they're invited to participate in those consultations as well. So it's informed consent, and or if you need an ILUA, then there's a process that needs to be followed that they would then ensure that the native title holders are aware of and have the opportunity to attend consultation meetings. So it's like an administration function that the PBC then undertakes. There's a board of directors, and there's also members of a corporation as well, but there's also the requirements of notifying all the native title holders as well. But that's basically our role, we're like an agent, or we hold the native title on trust on behalf of the native title holders and ensure that those native title rights and interests are protected moving forward, and also that their aspirations for country are also achieved.
Yeah, the way that I kind of explain it to those that are unsure is like if you own a unit in a unit block and there's a body corporate that also takes carriage of collective decisions, but you all have a say. One of the other questions asked was around if it's exclusive native title land and people want to live on country or they want to do a subdivision in that area, how that's managed. And I know that Helen's got a lot of experience in that and going through it at the moment. My quick response, and then I'll let Helen expand on that, is that because it's in collective ownership, you can't excise a lot as exclusive kind of freehold land. It's leases that may be granted that go for a certain period of time that go back through the board and the board of directors and the membership to make a decision on whether that can occur. So it's not, my understanding, and I might be wrong here, Helen, is that it's not held in perpetuity forever, but the underlying land is still kind of owned collectively by the group.
So we have two functions, our particular organisation. So when I talk about GMY perspective, because not everyone you may have native title, but you may not be the trustee. So there's the different legislation. So we are also, the GMY PBC, as part of their determination, or the GMY people negotiated another ILUA that would basically take effect post-determination, which would mean that what was formerly the Yarrabah Dogit that covered the majority of their exclusive native title determination would be transferred to them under the Aboriginal Land Act. So there was an ILUA in place for that to occur post-determination. It took a little while. It took 3 years after determination to actually occur. So there's other responsibilities that we as a PBC have as the trustee for the land, as well as making sure that we manage and make sure that the decisions we make as a trustee also protect and cultural heritage and native title requirements. So there's, even with regard to residential leasing, and it gets a little bit complex, but we will, as the trustee, need to have an ILUA with the native title holders to actually grant residential leasing. So we're going through that process at the moment to determine what areas might be suitable for residential leasing, understanding the constraints of the land. But say if we keep it simple, council have maintained some of their former trustee area, and they have an ILUA in place with us that basically allows them to issue, or people to apply for an expression of interest for a lot. And then what happens is they go through the council process as the trustee, and then that expression of interest will come over to us as the PBC to consider native title and cultural heritage issues. So that gives us the ability to go and inspect the site, and also to have a look at any cultural heritage considerations, and or if we need to develop a cultural heritage management plan that would then deal with any development for that area. And then we consider those issues and then write back to the council as to whether or not we approve for that lease to be granted. And then that lease will become an agreement between the council and the lessee, and then be registered with the titles office. So that's an ILUA that's either grants 30-year leases or 99-year leases, if that sort of makes sense or answers your question, Josh.
Yeah, that's great. And look, the
it's very complex, I have to say. It's very complex.
Yeah, it's not very clear. We'll
no.
go back over that.
Yeah,
no, it's not.
It's very complex. And I think there's a lot of people who haven't navigated their way through this space. So there's a lot of learnings that we can learn from what's happened in the past, and how we might then be able to improve our experience to then improve the experience for others.
Yeah. Now, the last one that we'll talk about before we go on is just the concept of native title and potential extinguishment of that land in order to undertake economic activities. And the issue of potentially the native title owners having to forfeit part of that native title or extinguish it to achieve those economic opportunities, and whether that's really, is that the right thing? Well, firstly, is that correct? And the second thing is that the right way to go about it? Is there a middle ground? So does anyone want to take that? There's some experience that we've been through, Helen, with Dwayne, but you want to kind of touch on that to begin?
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, we'll talk about the Mundagalpai experience. So they're a group that Cassie spoke about earlier, where they have two types of native title. So they have non-exclusive native title, so that coexists. And then they have a portion of area that was determined to have exclusive possession. And so they had aspirations, knowing they had exclusive possession, to look at how they then might be able to achieve socioeconomic outcomes from their exclusive area, knowing they didn't need to speak then to other stakeholders because they were the exclusive, in exclusive possession. However, when they started working with Josh and looking at the constraints of the area, and then looking at the native title issues associated with potential development, it was discovered that if they were to develop that area, it would extinguish their native title. So after consideration and how long that they had worked to achieve that recognition, what they decided is that, looking at and scoped out other areas of land that might be suitable for their aspirations, and then have subsequently moved their development to another area that was already considered to be extinguished, and have then used other instruments and other legislation to negotiate a trustee lease. So that meant that their native title stays intact and that exclusive possession is not extinguished.
Helen, why does it mean, why, if they're undertaking economic development, does it mean that it would extinguish native title?
Because they couldn't no longer enjoy those rights and interests in that way, because the development would actually impact on their ability to continue those native title rights and interests.
Okay.
Luckily,
it was the continued enjoyment of the native title rights and interests would that be in fact affected by that proposed development, because it was massive, it was big infrastructure.
Yeah, it's on the other side of Cairns,
Mm.
the inlet. But luckily, they could move it to the other side of the Bund Wall, for those of you who know Trinity Inlet. So it was land right next door. So it wasn't that
which
hard.
worked out perfect. I think in the long run, and by planning is crucial. Planning also for aspirations for native title is actually really valuable. It really sets the foundation to achieve aspirations and move forward. And in hindsight and our experience in native title, I would recommend, and if there was a review of native title, that more groups actually spend time in the planning space to look at what might happen post determination, because there's a lot of time taken to get to determination that we could be thinking about how we then, once we get it, hit the ground and hit the ground running, as opposed to then waiting for all these ILUAs to then register and take effect, and things are still happening. And GMY native title determination was made in 2012, and it's now 2020, and we're still going through our master plan process. Whereas a lot of these thinkings and the aspirations could actually be triggered earlier on in the process so that we can hit the ground running when the PBC is then registered.